Today we are going to install the Rocky Road Superslider kit for the Land Rover Discovery 2. This is a completely bolt-on, heavy-duty slider that requires enlarging a few existing holes in the door sill. Installation should take a few hours and will require a partner. We will be making a separate video with a complete review of the workmanship and performance of these sliders, so if you haven't seen that video, be sure to check it out. Part 1. Removing the plastic sill. The sliders will mount using the existing location of the stock plastic door sill trim. You will need to remove the trim plugs as well as the lower mud flap in order to remove the sill. The trim plugs are in tight. The best way is to use the tip of your tool to spread out the keeper and then pound the tool behind it and pull the plug out. It's awkward, but you eventually get the hang of it. The last connection of the door sill is on this front part. You're going to have a bolt for the seal. And if you still have the factory mud flaps, like this vehicle does, you're going to have 3 bolts for them too. That one right there is for the seal. So the seal and 3 mud flap bracket bolts. And that should be 10 millimeter, which it is. We'll get those off right now. If you still have the mud flap trim, you'll want to cut the rubber connection from the sill to the bracket at this point. If you took the fender bracket off, you're going to want to put it back on once you get it off, because as you can see, it acts as a mud deflector at the rear of the wheel well. Just put those 3 nuts back in once you separate the bracket from the sill, and then we'll tighten them up. The next step is to get an assistant and a floor jack and lift the slider up to the sill. You will see that one hole in the rear will need to be marked and drilled, and some of the holes on the front will not be used. In order to save time and effort, it is worth it to mark all of the holes, even the ones that line up, with the Sharpie, so that when you lower the slider, you will only drill the holes that need it. There is also a hole in the rear that is really close to the rear door. It will require a right angle drill to drill out successfully, or I guess you could remove the rear door, but we just decided to omit that bolt since we figured the bolt pattern was pretty robust without it. Now that you've marked all the holes, it is time to drill them out. Using a 3/8 inch bit, drill out each hole. The sill is fully boxed, so you will need to drill 2 holes, one out the front and again out the rear. Drilling straight is very important, or you will need to ream out the holes at best and potentially mess up your fit at work. Using a guide is highly recommended. We didn't have one, we were just careful. In the end, we did end up reaming a few of the holes out, just a little bit. Once all the holes are drilled, check straightness by placing the bolts through the sill box. If any bolts don't make it through and/or are crooked, ream them out slowly so you don't have to make the holes too big. When installing the slider, the back side with the gap, the small side goes on the back door, the long side goes on the front door. So you're inclined when you try to install to match the long plate with the long side. You'd think that's the case, the small plate with the back side. That's not true. If you look at the lines, you'll see That plate provides good support between the back and the front door on the back side where the door's not in the way. And then that small plate lines up right here. That will save you a bit of confusion. With the assistant's help, raise the slider up with the floor jack just like when you marked it, except this time place all the mounting bolts into position. If your holes were not drilled straight or in the right spot, it will be obvious and you will need to mark those locations, lower the slider, and re-drill if necessary. Underneath on the back of the door sill, you may see some of these plugs right there. They swiggle them back and forth. They'll break off. That tie wrap on that cable is going to need to be pulled. We'll reroute that cable. I don't even know what it goes to. If you know what that plug does for your disco, maybe it has something to do with the leveling system, comment below. Okay, here's the plate from the back side on the front of the vehicle on the passenger side. This you can move out of the way. See the bolt come through here, bolt come through there. This is the short plate on the front, remember. There is one I drilled, and there is one I drilled that I don't use. The back plate connects, and you can see it go all the way back here. So I have a bolt there, a bolt there, a bolt here. I have to drill a hole here all the way through. I have to drill a hole here all the way through, and a hole there all the way through. And I think one of them does work. This one by the back door works. Yeah, that one works. That's through. They're all through. Okay. So there's 3 bolts I got to try to drill from the other side. That could be kind of a pain without a right angle drill. We'll see what we can do. With that one kind of tight and that one loose, we're going to put this other plate on and start with that back one. You want to tighten from the outside in, and then once we have it lined up, we'll drill that last hole. So let's line this hole up. Where's all your water? Right there. This one should all go in. That was pretty good for one-handed. You can see the plate is all in there. Now let's get the washers and the nut. And ratchet the back one, and then we can drill the hole. That's probably enough to drill the hole. That one started. That one there. We're done after this.
Yeah. I gotta do mine.
Started. Gotta get the tool. It's coming Friday. You have to get it off my front door.
Who's it coming with?
Huh?
Which carrier?
I think it's UPS. I could probably change delivery. Okay, now let's do that backside plate. Now is everything lined up the way we like it on that side?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready?
Yep. Did it go in fairly good?
This one.
Oh, okay, it's under the thing.
This one.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's the one under the weather strip?
Yeah.
Okay.
See if it'll go. Good.
What's
Okay, try that.
Can I hold it?
I can't hold it if it doesn't grip.
Okay, with most of them tight, now we're going to drill this hole right here.
From the back, don't you?
Huh?
You do it from the back?
No, it wouldn't fit from the back.
Okay.
So I'll have to spring the door.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Good. That should go all the way through.
Very good.
Once the final hole is drilled, tighten the slider using an outside-in pattern. Do not over-tighten. It is very easy to tighten these bolts. Just get them tight enough that the slider is solid. We over-tightened the passenger side, and we will show you what happens if you do. Do not make the same mistake we did. Here's the back plate on the back passenger side. You can see right here is when I realized I started to over tighten. I don't know if you can see very well, but this bolt is a little deformed. This bolt right here is especially deformed. It's kind of on an angle. Here's the pinch seam. You got a strong bracket there. You can almost see this plate. You can almost see this plate right here starting to bow. And that's because I over tightened this. I should probably back off on these a little bit. I actually backed off once I discovered my over tighten error, and you can see this is still rock solid. It's going to do very well as a rock slider. That's what it's intended to do. Here's the body panel right there. You can see the rock slider drops down about 2 inches. You'll lose about 2 inches ground clearance, but that's all to protect and slide on the rock. This will keep the trees out of the way. It should serve its purpose. The problem is the bolts on the backside never felt like they got tight. I was doing a alternating power pattern from outside in, cranking, cranking, cranking. You need to stop when these bolts get sucked in. What happens if you keep cranking is it bends your body panel inwards, and you can see this gap on the gutter trim right here. This gap there from flexing inward. You can actually bend that plate and over tighten them, and you could see the bolts on the backside start to deform. That's not a fault of the design, it's a fault of me tightening too tight. And we'll watch that on the driver's side, and lucky for you, you know what not to do. Now that you have your slider properly tightened, we chose to complete this project by reinstalling the trim plugs over the holes we did not use. This gave it a very nice finished look. Yep. Is that going to work over the plate?
Yeah, that'll just, if I can get the... Just get, there we go. There you go, won't come out. Do that on the other side too. Let's do it.